Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Magic with Zuby. My name is Zuby, and if you're brand new to this show, the show is all about a little well-known card game called Magic the Gathering. On today's episode, we brought on our first proxy artist, Baerthe, real Baerthe on Twitter, and we talked about the state of proxies and what it's like to, design proxies and, differences between proxies and alters and all that good stuff. Be sure to listen to it. And then the later half of the show, we get pretty deep into Final Fantasy XIV because it's kind of my new obsession, if you haven't told. And there goes my phone just randomly going off. I do apologize about that. But before we get into the interview, this show is sponsored by cardsphere.com and Alter Sleeves. Use promo code MagicWithZuby on checkout if for all your Alter Sleeves needs. And you can find me on Twitter at Magic with Zuby, on Instagram at Magic__Zuby, and TikTok at mtgzuby, and email me with any questions you may have at mtgzuby@gmail.com. That should be about it. I think so. Oh yeah, you can find the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, and Spotify, and on YouTube. Just search Magic with Zuby. And traveling soon. I'm still working on the details, but I might be at Command Fest Philadelphia. Maybe, possibly. I really hope I get more confirmation on it. I'm just trying to work on getting PTO off that week, and so I can definitely go to it. But yeah, without further ado, here is Baerthe, the proxy artist. So, hey everybody, Zuby here, and I have with me the amazing, I think the first proxy artist ever to grace Magic with Zuby, the real Baerthe, Robert Stephen Thancred. Welcome to the show.
Hello. that was a very interesting intro.
Yes. We're not sure which is the real name now.
Right. Well, I'll be real with you. I wanted to pick Baerthe as my just username, handle, all the social medias. Let me tell you about some issue I ran into. There's a Japanese company that makes toilets. One of their toilet is also called the Baerthe.
Oh my, spelled the same way, like
same way. They discontinued it, I think.
Wow.
But I ran into issues where I was like, they claimed it on social media, on Twitter, and I'm just like, I don't know who I talk to like try to get it, or if I even really care. So I just adopted the whole real moniker that a lot of like celebrities run into when they like try to like make an account, like the name's taken.
Now you have me. I just Googled Japanese toilet Baerthe, and the first couple options are pretty normal. And then, of course, I go down a little bit further and I see, some porn. I'm like, what the fuck?
Oh, well, there you go. Oh yeah, that's the other issue I keep running into is that wow, I won't get in too much into that. But after I started using the username, I found out that there are there's a handful of like I think they're Japanese or Korean users that are also using the name for like porn sites. I'm like,
God.
oh, that's great. I spent this actually gets into like, how I came up with the name. I spent quite a long time trying to figure out an artist moniker that would like make sense. That was like one word.
Yeah.
And so I ended up on Baerthe, which is a Welsh corruption of my first name. And I was like, this is ingenious. No one's going to have it. I was doing Google searches, couldn't find anything. I started using it, and all of a sudden, there's other stuff. And I'm like, that's great. Can't change it now. I just can ignore it. And it hasn't been an issue, so I don't think it ever will be an issue. So,
yeah, the only closest thing I have to that since Zuby, that's been my nickname, God, for almost 20 years now. It's a play on my last name, but there's one other, I guess, right-winger named Zuby that does a lot of stupid transphobic shit. And so there have been times where, of course, there have been times where I've been mistaken as that person. And I'm just like, oh, fuck. And I had no idea that this person even existed at all because, like I said, this has been my nickname forever. So it just made
Right.
sense to call my podcast this.
That's how they get you.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I actually see that all the time. Um, I'll be like talking to a streamer or something, like a content creator, and I'll be like talking to him, and we'll be talking about like for like a contract or something, and I'll be talking to him like branding, and like I'll look up like their username, and it's like, hey, did you know there's a furry neo-Nazi group with this name? And it's like
Oh
it
God.
happens so often, and it's just like, what is going on?
Oh man. Yeah, the internet's a wild place. It really is.
It is. It is. And I feel like as we move further and further into the internet being just this thing that's part of like, our culture and like humanity as a whole, uh we're definitely in like 10, 20, probably like 20, 30 years gonna run into the issue where it's gonna become hard to create usernames, you know what I mean? Um because we're kind of
Yeah.
getting to the point where I mean, we're at the point where they're all taken, basically. But you know what I mean? It's getting harder and harder to be like, to just kind of create one and have it not also be used by someone else.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, you're right. It's gonna be tough.
But, anyways, we're here for magic.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been following you for God a while. I think one of my first interactions with you, you sent me some proxies, God, a couple years ago, I think it was, and I still have them. I'm using some of them. I'm not using all of them. I'm definitely using some of the soul rings you sent me. But the I guess what I wanted to bring you on here for, one, is you're the very first proxy artist that I've ever officially had on here,
Yeah.
and two, I just wanted to know. I guess I want to get some of your input on today's world of Magic, where it seems like today proxies are a lot more accepted compared to even just a few years ago.
Oh yeah, no, certainly. And I feel like I don't want to take credit. I feel like I'm definitely a part of this. I feel like the proxy guy, Josh, I feel like he definitely is the person who has been like the flagship like person doing this.
Hmm.
Um, the leader of it. I mean, not leader because he doesn't obviously doesn't talk to other proxy artists too often, but you know what I mean? Like he
Yeah.
really started this thing of just kind of just doing them, and a lot of proxies have obviously existed for pretty much the whole of Magic. I mean, when you look at the original beta Magic cards, they are essentially just, pieces of paper with just stuff written on them, which is
Hmm.
arguably the most popular form of proxy. Um, but yeah, a few years ago, like 5, 6 years ago, there was definitely this more larger turnaround that kind of started happening, especially with the proxy guy coming out and just releasing these more higher quality, interesting designs that weren't necessarily just, magic frame plus random art I found on Google. He
Yeah.
started really elevating it to being like, hey, he works on actual card games and he started making actual card game frames for Magic that were just these alternatives. And I think that really, I mean, it inspired me for sure. I actually, my first interaction with Josh was me actually asking him for, I believe, some tips and directions on it like a few years ago. Um, but it, I feel like him, myself, other people have really started like really inspiring that kind of like, hey, it's okay if you do this. Like just letting other designers and artists know, like, hey, it's totally fine if you want to make proxies. Like no one, you know, Wizards isn't going to sue you. Hasbro is not going to sue you. I mean, if you're not selling them, but because I feel for the longest time it was definitely like this thing where it's like, oh, you're making counterfeit cards, or like, oh, you're
Yeah.
stealing art, and it's like, yeah, it was like that for the longest time, and we're past that. We're kind of in like this more like the people's magic,
The
you know?
people's. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of that has created this kind of feedback loop because I'm part of communities here on Twitter, here on Discord, on Reddit, and there are communities of just proxy artists. We just share proxy art, we share tokens, we share frames and tips and tricks and stuff like that, and fonts. We share this stuff to create these proxies, and that has started to kind of create this larger feedback loop where we have really high quality people coming into it making really high quality designs. And it's interesting because at the end of the day, it's not something that's marketable. It's not something that can really be sold. It's not something that can really be, I mean, yeah, you, adjacent stuff to it, but it's interesting because I find it similar to fan art,
Yeah.
just different. It's a little bit hard to explain.
No, I see where you're coming from. And the attitude, at least from what I've seen at a local level, the attitude of proxies has definitely changed too. Like most people, there's more people not caring if you use proxies in a commander deck, for instance, nowadays.
Exactly.
Which is a great thing, by the way, right?
Yeah.
And obviously they're still going to frown upon it if it's like a standard or pauper or modern deck for the most part.
More tournament settings. More of that driven gameplay. I actually have a kind of a larger theory about why that is, and interestingly, it has nothing to do with Magic.
Sure.
So my local game shop, my LGS, it's a pub, and we do a lot of drinking there. And a part of that drinking tends to get people to be more, just more open and just more receptive of things. And one of the things we started a few years ago is allowing 3D printed miniatures, right? And that kind of changed the dynamic of wargaming as a whole for both my LGS and I think as people as a whole when they suddenly started realizing that, we have these really cheap 3D printers, we have these really cheap resin printers, we have these really cheap kind of cutters and CNC machines, and there's nothing really stopping people, and people do it, just making their own miniatures, making their own D&D miniatures, making their own Warhammer figures. Yeah. And there's, at the end of the day, nothing stopping them from really using them in gameplay either. If it looks identical to a, I'm not super hip on Warhammer, but if this Dwarven soldier looks the same as if I bought it from Games Workshop, then why does it matter? We're just here to play the game. And that attitude has really caught on at my LGS, because my LGS, they own a 3D printer. They sell their own models, right?
That's cool.
But they also allow people to bring in models, and they also take commissions for models and all this stuff. And I think that attitude culturally as a whole, there's more shift to a more creator-focused economy, more at-home creations. Hobbies nowadays are really way more involved than they ever been. You have people whose entire hobby is building small electronics, building little robots, building 3D models, doing these huge resin things. And 10, 20 years ago, that would have been extremely cost prohibitive. 30 years ago would have been completely unheard of. It's very rare 30 years ago to find someone who was, like an engineering tinkerer. They existed. They've existed for a long time, but I feel like now with the whole maker movement, the whole kind of just reinvention of like a cottage industry almost, has definitely changed people's views on what exactly is a authentic piece of gaming part, and that has translated even at my LGS to proxies. We we allowed for a while all proxies, all settings, except official play, obviously, for both, standard, modern, this is before Pioneer, Commander, and this is before Oathbreaker too. And it worked out. It worked out really well. It worked out for about 2-3 weeks. And then we had someone come in with a $80,000 deck that was entirely proxies. and it sparked an issue that ended up getting proxies completely banned at my LGS, because if you can just print power, right? What's stopping the power level at your gaming group from reaching absurdist levels? You know,
Nothing's stopping
and that's what
you.
we were. Yeah, it doesn't stop him, and that's what we ran into. We ran into extreme CDH every match, all matches, every day, all day, and it started killing the people's drive to actually want to play Magic. So they banned proxies, and obviously that didn't go over well. People don't want to suddenly have to be forced to spend a lot of money to continue playing a game, and obviously a lot of people come back with the comment of, well, they can just use different cards, you know, they can use different strategies, play a different deck. And that's kind of what we landed on. Eventually we were able to come to a more agreement as a play group, and we started using proxies again, but only for lands, and that actually gave us a really nice power level. We did some other stuff later on to change like our pricing and stuff to make it more fair, and that actually completely eliminated the CDH problem at my my LGS. It's not that we don't want people playing CDH there; it's that there are, here in Portland, there are other shops that are more dedicated to like high level competitive play.
Yeah.
And I don't think a casual bar off the side of a highway is the best place. So
that's interesting.
It's interesting because I feel like it's definitely a combination of multiple things. You know, proxies are definitely way more accepted right now than they have ever been, and I feel like that might be to their own detriment at some point. I feel like we may get to a point where proxies are a little bit too accepted, and then Wizards has to step in. But I think Wizards themselves is even really getting on the train. The secret layer stuff started off pretty normal, I would say, pretty like Magic. And as it's gone on, we've gotten more and more secret layers that are not Magic. They've drifted far and wide from what people considered a normal looking Magic card to be.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And
I love it. I love it too.
Oh, I love it as well, because it means there's hope. But the thing is, they're also hiring proxy artists.
Yeah.
You know, they've obviously seen the alter community. They've obviously seen the proxy community. They're obviously aware of these peoples and groups because they're hiring artists and designers from both groups. They're hiring alterists, they're hiring proxy designers, and they're having them work on, you know, XYZ thing. And it's interesting because they don't have to do that. They could obviously take a more adversarial approach to it. They could obviously start, you know, striking these things down, because at the end of the day, every proxy is technically counterfeiting. But you know, they don't seem to care, and that's weird, right?
Yeah, because they even have an official stance on proxies right now, don't they?
They have a new revised, well, I wouldn't say new. They've clarified their stance a little bit more. They're saying that proxies and playtests and counterfeits are three separate categories. They're saying a counterfeit is a card that's trying to pass itself off as a real Magic card. A playtest is another object that you have written or added information onto to represent a Magic card, and a proxy is some sort of constructed piece of cardboard or card in some fashion that is a replica of a card but isn't necessarily the card. And they clarified it a little bit more recently, saying that they're not against proxies or playtests and that they're only against counterfeits. But it feels to me like they're really trying to...
It's kind of splitting hairs.
It's splitting hairs.
Yeah.
It's a problem I've talked to with other proxy artists about, is that we want to self-police. And the reason why I keep telling proxy artists we need to and we should be self-policing is because if we don't, Wizards will be forced to enforce their copyright. It's that simple. And
Yeah, that's true.
proxies are copyright violations, technically. And Wizards can legally just pretend they don't see them. They can legally pretend they don't exist, just like the secondhand market, and then they don't have to deal with this extra legal ramifications, of counterfeiting and gambling, for example, with the secondhand market.
Oh God, imagine if they did.
It would be Magic would be banned in the United States. That is the outcome of that because gambling is illegal here.
Well, not just the gambling, but I mean, like, imagine if they tried to police proxy artists like that, because
right.
And that's something that I've noticed with proxy artists or alterists, or I guess proxy artists be the better term, is, as I've noticed throughout the years, the proxies that at least the people that I follow are getting, just like the secret layers, getting less and less away from what a typical Magic card looks like. Whereas I remember maybe a couple years ago, proxy artists would make cards that would look not exactly like a Magic card, like a Counterfeit, but close enough to where you could still say, oh, okay, yeah, you can play that in Magic. If that makes sense.
Yeah, there was a lot more of a push and effort, kind of pre-Discord, pre-Twitter era, back when proxies were more contained on like forums and mostly on Reddit and stuff, Facebook groups. Yeah, there was a lot more of a push to creating cards that looked like Magic cards, and the idea for that, from my kind of real understanding, was that it would make it easier to kind of use it, right? If the only thing different was the art, then, well, it's an alter, you know what I mean? It's not a proxy, it's an alter. And it's like, well, you're splitting hairs there, and technically it is a proxy. But,
Yeah.
Judges were a little bit more lenient on that. They were a little bit more, and with kind of that breakdown of what is a Magic card, especially in post M15, where we now have like showcases and
Oh God,
goddamn,
every set
what do they
has
call 'em?
showcase frames and foil etched
Yeah,
whatever.
they have all these different print variations
Oh
and
God.
special releases and alternate arts, and we're really ramping up that collection game.
I
But
mean,
it's
I love it.
like
Don't get me wrong, but God, it's getting tiresome every single set.
I really love it. I really, really love it. And I think I love it for a different reason than most people. I actually sell all of my alternate cards. I only keep my non-foil regular print cards. I don't keep any showcase. I don't keep foils. I don't keep etched foils or anything like that. I sell all of them. And I love it because it has made the cards I actually want and the cards I actually want to play with, the most basic versions, infinitely cheaper.
Yeah, that way, yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
there are so many cards now that are just cheaper because there's now these chase versions. And
Yeah, that makes
on
sense.
one hand, it's kind of scummy of Wizards to be constantly trying to exploit people's pocketbooks by making more and more rarer cards. But on the flip side, it satiates both the secondhand market and the player base. The people who actually want to play the game now have wider access to cards, and the
Yeah,
people who
that's true.
just want to collect can collect.
Oh man, speaking of collecting, my good friend, he's not only like a huge Magic player, but he's also a collector, right? His goal is to collect, a play set of every single expansion ever printed from Alpha up until
Oh
Streets of New
my.
Capenna, not counting the reprint sets like, Modern Horizons and
Right,
Commander
right.
Legends and all those.
The list.
Yeah, the list, stuff like that. Just it, because when they started doing Modern Horizons and time yeah, Modern Horizons were in Commander Legends where they are brand new cards, he was just like, no, fuck this, I'm just gonna focus on standard only expansions.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
bet,
even him, he's completely done. He's like you. He sells the showcase stuff to get the regular versions of it, and because he's just kind of over wanting to, because his whole thing was, do I get a playset of the normal version and the showcase version, as well as the foil etched,
right?
special edition, old bordered,
Yeah,
whatever crap.
I definitely feel like the ones to get the worst pick of this lot are the people who are trying to do full collections because at this point it's impossible. It's just impossible
Oh
because
yeah, it's
you have sets like New Capenna where they have like regional specific box toppers. All right, good luck with
oh
that.
yeah, that's right.
Good luck getting those. You know, or a Neo coming out of Neon Dynasty, they had the what that demon, and it had like a red version of the frame, even though it was a black card, and I
Oh,
still
that's
find that
right.
silly. But yeah, it had the ultra rare, super secret, hidden red version. That's like the card's terrible, but this red version's like $2,000 because there's like I don't know 100 or so of them or something like that.
Yeah,
It's just it gets a little bit a little bit much at times.
it does. It does, and it's like you said, it definitely keeps the prices down, which is great. Um, especially for when I'm building my cubes or my
Yeah.
EDH decks.
It it actually also solves quite a bit of the proxy problem, believe it or not.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, a huge amount of so I print out and give proxies to my like friends, family, people who just ask. Um, please don't viewers don't ask me, please. But like,
ah, yes, I will take one of each fetch land
right, one
and
of each,
one of
please.
each.
But like, I've had I used to like do like prints of sets for people for like cubes, right? They come to me, I'd help them design a cube, and I tell them, I give them like all of the print files, and they can like print the cube themselves, for example. I've gotten that a lot less in the last 3, 4 years, despite the fact that I'm doing higher and higher quality work. And I think a huge part of that is literally just the availability of the normal versions of the cards. These normal versions don't need to be proxied anymore. This card that is critical to your deck that for some reason is $50 because it was only printed once, 5 years
Right?
ago. Well, now there's alternate prints of it. Now there's a showcase version of it. Now there's and all the people who had this old crappy version, the old used version, are mostly collectors who are selling it for the showcase, who are selling it for the expanded art, who extended for
Yeah,
for the new
yeah,
foil. Um, and so that's kind of changed how I've seen like the secondhand market deal with just the normal cards. They're a lot cheaper now. They're just, price comparison, card per card, a lot of them are just significantly cheaper. It's much cheaper to play EDH right now, even discounting the hundreds of new options of cards that they print each quarter. Um,
yeah. You're right, because I mean they've done a lot better job making precons the past couple years
oh yeah,
in
oh
terms
yeah,
of just them trying to keep up with people who've been playing a lot longer. Um,
yeah. They
it's so just out of the box, like even the ones from Kamigawa, the pilot, the vehicle one, just out of the box, that one can be pretty damn strong.
oh yeah, oh yeah. That one's devastating. It reminds me of the old, what was it, 2016 Commanders, where they were just absolutely bonkers.
Was that the Dragon one and the
Yeah, Dragon, Edgar.
yeah Edgar, or was
Yeah,
that the four color ones, the Atraxa? And
I don't know
there
if
there
that
was like
was
2 years
16
where
or 15.
back to back 2 years they were like broken. Like there
Yeah, oh
was
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
four color
But
ones, and then the Edgar or Dragon and all that.
yeah, they were totally wild. And
Loved it.
I think a lot of this shift to just giving players cards that work, cards that players want to play with, this shift where Wizards has stopped focusing on trying to make people feel like they have to collect an entirety of a set to be, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like they're trying to like drown out their older cards or something, which they're not, but they are in part, and that has driven
Yeah.
down the need for people to create proxies that look like real cards. There's no need really anymore. I don't really know any proxy artists who even do cards like that anymore. I certainly haven't done a card like
Yeah, I
that
haven't
in
seen that in
literally
years
years.
now. Yeah.
Um,
It's
because that
I
just isn't the
see
focus.
I see so much variation of art out there, and
Yeah.
like one of my favorite ones that I saw, I can't remember who did it, but it was like the Pokemon Game Boy ones where they made covers of like the original
Oh,
Pokemon Game
yes.
Boy art.
I
I
wanna.
can't remember who did it, but I
I
loved the
know who
cards.
did that. I know who did that. I want to say who it is, but I'm like 80% sure I have the wrong person. So I don't want
Yeah.
to misattribute someone. But yeah, actually saw that a few days ago. Either earlier today or a few days ago or something, but it was really interesting, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's a really creative use of this formatting, of this templating, and it's a really great way to
Oh,
do
yeah, I
that."
loved it.
And that kind of goes into what I've been thinking lately, especially for the last like 2 years. I've kind of changed my thoughts on how I do proxies, and I think Josh, the proxy guy, I don't want to speak for him, but I think he's definitely changed his focus too. Um, and I've noticed a few others doing this as well. Is that we're not really competing with Magic anymore. We're not trying to like make cooler Magic cards. We're not really trying to like provide alternatives or anything anymore. We're almost like just directly competing with secret layers.
In
You
a
know what I
sense,
mean?
yeah, yeah. That's a
And
good way of putting it.
it's interesting because it pushes everyone. You know, a new secret layer comes out or a new showcase frame comes out, and suddenly it's like, well, I could do that. You
Dude,
know?
speaking of proxies and secret layers and alters, I do want to state that I am sponsored by Alter Sleeves. Use promo code Magic with Zuby on checkout. But I gotta say, one of my favorite things to come out of the past couple years is Alter Sleeves. It,
Yeah,
it's I love the idea of it, that because I've always been one that I would love to get cards altered, but I kind of don't want to damage the original card in a sense. You know what I mean?
no, I know. That's one of the entire reasons why I started making my own tokens and proxies, is just because I didn't want to ruin any of my cards.
And Alter Sleeves is like the best way to get, you know,
Yeah.
your
I
cards quote unquote altered in a
Yeah,
sense.
I do also have to say, for transparency, I have worked in the past for both or Sleeve Alters LLC, their parent company, or their company and their parent company, Mythic Gaming. I've been a graphic contractor with them on and off since the beginning, actually. And yeah,
Nice.
no, I love Alter Sleeves. I was there day one. I actually was one of the people advising them on like a lot of the technical specifications, and I actually have still somewhere in one of my office drawers a sealed. It's in like a little team bag, but some of like the very first Alter Sleeves printed.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and they're really crusty. They're kind of thick. Um, there was definitely some things that needed to be worked out. Like that's back when we still had the transparency issue where like stuff
Yeah.
was just randomly white, and we couldn't figure it out. But yeah, they've definitely, and that was actually the other thing I was gonna talk about too, is a lot of proxy people I know have stopped making proxies and are making alter sleeves.
Oh, dude, it's perfect. I friggin' it's great. They're not that expensive. The website always crashes whenever there's a sale. Just like
They are
last.
trying to fix that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, and I mean, should give kudos to you, is I'm using all your shrine altars. I don't have altars for the new
Creatures. Yeah.
the new
I need to
Kamigawa
finish them.
ones.
I'll be real with you. I'm stuck I'm actually kind of stuck on that because so you may have noticed when I redid my proxies to include the creatures, I redid the entire frame.
Oh,
And
you
it's
did?
because I don't have the original files anymore.
Oh no.
So
Wait, does that mean
for
I got to
me,
get new altar sleeves for everything now?
that was going to be my bad news because
Oh,
I,
you.
I I could spend the time to create creature specific versions based off of the old template, but I
No.
would have to remake the entire thing. So I'm
Baerthe,
trying
how
to figure
could
out right
you?
now what to do, if I should just remake it or go forward with the new shrine template and kind of go from there. They're both about the same amount of work though, so I still haven't decided.
Oh, I get it. I get it. Oh, I'm going on Alter Sleeves website right now and looking. No, I don't want to have to. I mean, I'll buy them all again because I know I will.
Well, I haven't uploaded him yet. Probably by the time this episode goes live, there'll be some major changes with Alter Sleeves. I can't comment too much on them, but the site
Ooh.
is going major revision right now. We're talking massive changes, huge improvements, lots of new features. Um,
Okay,
so
sweet.
currently, no one can submit any alters, at least for the next week or two. So I have some time to figure out the shrine situation. Um, Ironically, I wanted to do it last week. I wanted to figure it out and get those shrines up. But then the day I go to do it, they're like, "We're taking down uploads for the week," and I'm
Yeah,
like, "Oh, well, okay."
there's a whole little announcement on there
Yeah,
with it. Okay.
they want to integrate more with Mythic Gaming and some of the
Oh yeah, I
more dynamic products.
yeah, when they were doing the Mythic Gaming sleeves with some of the other content creators, Chad actually sent me some of them. One of the ones that Jessica Inked Game, not Inked Gaming, Inkling
Yeah,
Customs. That there we go. The ones that she worked on, and they were like the little robot ones or something,
yeah,
and
yeah.
even those things were pretty freaking cool. Like getting to sleeve your whole deck and a
Right.
theme altar.
Ideally, I've talked to Chad kind of on and off about like the future he envisions for Mythic Gaming. Um, I won't comment too much on it because I don't think he
Yeah,
wants
yeah,
me talking about it.
yeah. Don't
But
spoil anything you can't talk about if you're under an
but I
NDA
do
or
know
anything.
I do know Mythic frames themselves are different than altar sleeves. They're made in a completely different fashion.
Yeah,
That's why they're so much cheaper. I do know at some point they want to expand out to have more of those available. Same thing with the play mats and presumably other gaming related things.
yeah, that'd be
Um,
cool.
but it's definitely interesting. I mean, they've really taken off. Players have absolutely loved them. I run into people at my LGS all the time. They don't even know like I work at Alter Sleeves, and they'll be like, "Oh man, have you heard of this? Have you heard of this site? You can upload altars." And I'm like, "Oh no, really?
Like,
Just tell me
whoa.
about it."
And then you'd be like, you gotta check out this guy, Baerthe.
Right,
Makes really good stuff.
right. Interestingly, I have yet to pull that card out. Um, I'm going. One of these days, though, I really want to. I want to be at like a convention, and I want someone to be like talking about how cool I am, and then be like, "Yeah," and then go up to him and be like, "I'm actually evil," and then like just walk off. You know?
Whisper in their ear, I'm actually evil and no one will ever believe you.
Say something like really screwed up, like they'll never find the kittens, and then just walk off and be like, what did he mean? What did he mean by that?
Yeah. No,
Get
man.
into get into a Twitter controversy or something. But
Oh,
anyways,
it's not hard to do. Just say some random BS about Commander, and then you'll become the main character of the day.
oh, I got it. Commander should be 98 cards.
Ooh.
Ooh, be a
Yes.
real throwdown there.
And say it's 98 cards because it is
Optimal drawing curve or
the
something.
most optimal drawing curve between land and non-land cards.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just make up some
Yeah.
math, and then you'll get the math nerds on you. And then you'll get the EDH nerds on you.
That realistically, that's one of the best ways to try to like solve a math problem is just post a wrong answer on like Reddit or GitHub or something.
Oh
And
yeah,
then
it's great.
just watch as people get angry at you and then explain why you're wrong. And it's like, yes, do my work for me.
Right? Um, God, freaking Magic Twitter. It's always a new day. I have muted so much Magic stuff on Twitter the past couple months just for my own sanity. Because
Yeah,
it got to a point literally every day was some dumb drama happening. And it was mainly Commander. I never
yeah.
saw this kind of drama in standard modern legacy stuff. You know?
No, no, I've noticed this too. There's a lot more like that recent drama. This wasn't on Twitter, so maybe a bad example. But like, I don't know if you saw the rule update on misgendering players.
Oh, yeah, I saw it. Was that? Oh, well, of
I
course
don't,
there's drama around that because
yeah, like
assholes are going to be.
I don't even understand. Like, I mean, I understand like how that could happen, but I don't understand how that could happen. Who's intentionally going out of their way to misgender people? Because I mean,
Assholes. I
the
mean,
assholes, like, yeah, right. Like I
it's.
literally, after reading it, I sat there and I thought for like 30, 40 minutes, being like, I don't know if I've ever called someone by their gender when playing Magic. You know, like I usually just like you or like the person's name. Um, but yeah, real wild, real wild.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, yeah, out of all the times that I've played Magic, I can't recall. I mean, like, have I? I mean, not saying that I misgender, but have I called them by a gender? I'm sure,
Right?
but
Like
I don't know.
I'm sure I have too, but it's like one of those things where like I can't really think of any good, like I can think of a hypothetical situation, you know,
Yeah,
like oh, I'm explaining to like a second player what I'm doing to the first player, you know, like I'll be like, oh, I'm targeting his creature or something like that. But even then it's like, well, usually just like, oh, I'm targeting Krenko, I'm targeting, you know, Golos. I'm more
yeah.
specific because usually there isn't two Krankos on the board. There usually isn't two, you know, Golos on the board.
Hmm.
It's yeah. So like when I read that news, I was always just like, man, what in God's name has been going on at like these events where,
And, you know, something had to have
you
triggered it
know,
off too.
something had to have happened.
Yeah,
This isn't one of those. They don't make a change to the rules like that just like because. I mean, it's good that they did. It's
yeah.
obviously a good thing that, you know, people feel safe and have these protections when playing. But it's also like it's kind of really screwed up that we had to go
I mean,
through
I'm
and
not
make these changes to the
surprised.
rules.
I mean, dude, all you have to do is just go look at free magic on Reddit, and they're the fucking god awful worse. And I'll check up on that subreddit every so often just to make sure that I'm not one of the main characters or someone else I know is not one of the main
Yeah,
characters getting targeted, harassed. Because that's happened where I've known people
yeah,
that are friends of mine started getting targeted, harassed. I'm like, motherfuckers, what the hell? Just
right.
because,
And it gets crazy because
yeah.
it gets so out of proportion really quickly, especially on Twitter, especially on Reddit. A lot of these more point driven social medias, you know, people care about likes, people care about upvotes.
Yep, they want that.
They want that interaction,
Yeah, they
and
want
that
that
can
interaction.
cause interesting results. Because yeah, sometimes I see people just complaining about something, and then it suddenly becomes a big drama issue. You know, so
Oh
someone
god,
just
yeah.
has an offhand comment on Twitter, and all of a sudden, ah man, we're canceling Zuby. You know what I mean? And
Oh, I've already been canceled
it's
before.
like, but why? Like, what is? It's so silly. It's so silly.
Oh, well, I had my main day as being the Twitter bad guy one time, cause
Yeah.
yeah, cause I kind of did it on purpose too. It was
Oh no.
I put out a tweet stating if you're playing these four cards in Commander, you're doing it wrong. It's not casual or something.
All
And
right.
it was pictures of Rhystic Study, Smothering Tithe, Mana Crypt, and Mana Vault.
All right. I mean, you're not wrong, but like,
Oh, dude, it started this whole thing of freaking casual versus competitive. Casual is
yeah.
a mindset and all that stuff. It all depends on your intention with the cards. I'm like, Okay, I get it. Like, I see where people are coming from, but I also just wanted to make a stupid, cheeky tweet too at the
Right?
same
Well,
time.
that gets me into the other thing too. Is like people take a lot of times I see people taking these things that are obviously opinions, obviously just commentary, and they're taking it as like, oh shit, well, Zuby here said I can't be a casual now. Like, oh man, I gotta go yell at him or something. And it's like,
You know, because
no,
I'm part of the rules committee. I'm part of the
part of the rules
CAG.
committee, right?
I tell Sheldon right away, like, ban. I told him to ban Golos. Everybody was mad about that.
It's your fault.
It is. I told him, and I almost
Love
had
Golos.
to break up with the rules committee when they banned Hull Breacher or Hull
Right?
Breaker or whatever
Breaker?
whatever the
Yeah,
card was.
the mermaid, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just, yeah, and it's just it's wild. It's wild. It's really wild, and
Oh,
it's
it is.
very
It's
interesting that I see it a lot, so much as you even mentioned in the EDH community. But I rarely ever see it in the Magic community as a whole. I don't see it too often in. I don't see it at all in the proxy community. Interestingly enough, we haven't had uh, really any major infighting in a long time, and I think that's because a lot of the proxy groups have kind of split into like I wouldn't call them factions, but kind of like two ways of doing things. You got kind of the more Twitter, Instagram, Reddit focused people like myself
yeah.
who are like designing things. We're focusing more on like framing and more of the overall like design of a small art asset. And then you have a more of like the counterfeit crowd. You have more of the people on Reddit and the forums, which represent a huge segment of like the more older guard of proxies, and um they're different. They're really different. They're very
Mm-hmm.
hostile to us, and we're very hostile to them. And
It's for
a lot of it
y'all just need
comes.
to get into a war right now. Just hash it out,
Nah, I really don't think we ever will, and it's
J-
mostly because we just stay separate. And
or just do like a big game of EDH.
a
You
game
know,
of EDH to settle it, right?
whoever has the best proxies wins.
Well, that's the problem. We would never be able to agree on it because the two kind of the main separating point between the two groups is what constitutes a counterfeit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Is you have like the Reddit proxy community is quite large,
Mm-hmm.
and they make counterfeits. They sell prints. They talk about how to get high quality, legal passing cards. They talk about how to,
Oh yeah, a lot of the
do stuff
bootleg
like that.
stuff and
And that sets a bad name for everyone else. And we've kind of inadvertently pushed those people off of Instagram, off of Twitter, off of other platforms.
mm-hmm.
And they're now more centralized around Reddit, interestingly enough. And I'm curious as to why, really, because I don't know if it's a combination, and I think I have a theory that it's a combination of like community pressure, obviously players and whatnot not being as receptive to counterfeit cards as opposed to proxies, and then content creators like yourself and by adjacency me who are very vocal about being, oh, I don't know if you're very vocal, but are more so vocal about proxies should be allowed or proxies aren't counterfeits, you know what I mean? There's that different narrative. Um,
Yeah, I guess I'm
and
not very vocal about it. I've just always been under the assumption like if you want to play proxies, cool.
yeah,
I
but
just
but
yeah
that's what I'm getting at is like that's more vocal than before. You know what I mean? Like
yeah
that's
yeah
more vocal than really anyone because that's kind of the attitude I feel a lot of players are at or like are pretty much at. They're like, hey, if you want to play proxy, sure, that's fine. As long as it's nothing crazy, sure, why not?
yeah.
They don't see a reason why not.
The only time I can recall someone at an LGS where like we didn't want them to play with proxies is when they literally printed out their entire EDH deck with like the worst black and white photos and just glued them onto basic lands.
Oh my, that's a whole nother issue.
it
Usually,
was god awful. We're like, no,
yeah, I
you
bet.
cannot play that. get a real deck. Go get one of the precons.
Right. Usually I only see people having issues is if it's just if it's power related, you know. If they're coming in with a proxy deck and it's just obviously more powerful than everyone else is playing with,
Yeah,
then
I don't
it's
even...
a little it gets kind of like, hey man, like what's your real goal here, you know? Because obviously it's not that you can't
Yeah.
afford the cards, you know.
Yeah, I guess maybe maybe I do draw a line in the sand when you literally proxy your entire deck, including the basic lands, where
Yeah, me too. Me
you're
too.
just like, oh, okay, I can understand proxying some of the cards, right? You know,
Yeah.
like maybe the more
Yeah.
expensive ones or the hard to get ones, but when you're literally
Well,
proxy literally everything, okay, come on,
yeah, it
now
gets a
you're
little
just...
weird. And that's usually where I draw the line where cuz I'm usually fine with like, hey, look, if it's like a handful of super expensive cards and they're kind of really important to your deck, sure. If it's like, you know, you're testing out a new strategy and, you know, it's like 20, 30 cards in your deck, okay.
Yeah,
If it's like an alternate art or something, you know what I mean? Like if there's a reason for you to have the proxy and the reason isn't just because, well, I want to be the most powerful, then I'm usually fine with it. I draw the line where it's like, you're only proxying because you just want to have a deck that's better than everyone else's. I feel like that's definitely the wrong way of going about it because you're not really you're not playing the game at that point. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
you're playing to win. And if you're playing with proxies, you're probably playing casual commander. So going in with that super try hard, you know, stompy deck is kind of just a dick move.
Yeah.
Um, and it's different too. Like if you have a group, you have play group, and everyone's like, hey man, we're building CDH proxy decks. We want to have a super high powered throwdown. Yeah, you know, sure, that sounds great, but don't then turn around and bring that deck to the three newbies who just bought a precon. You know,
Right.
like that's you're gonna ruin Magic for them.
God. Oh, Magic players.
I know
Just...
it's so. I guess this is why EDH is so drama filled.
it is, man, and
It's that power level.
it's the
The
power
constant.
level, it's this whole social contract stuff. It's... and I get it. I totally get it because no one enjoys a EDH game where you're getting pub stomped or
Yeah.
the powers of the deck are completely out of whack.
Oh no, exactly. I know firsthand. I used to play CDH, uh, and I used to have a not CDH deck. I used to have a Loro life game deck.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Close to CDH levels. Wasn't exactly CDH levels because it wasn't really that fast, but it was the single most oppressive deck at my LGS for literally weeks on end. I was winning every single game, every single tournament.
Yeah.
If it wasn't me, it was the other dude who was playing CEDH, right? It would just went back and forth between me and one other person. And uh eventually the players at my LGS decided to just really stop showing up to Friday Night Magic because playing Commander just was not fun.
Yeah,
And this
that
kind of also
sucks.
corresponded earlier with what I was telling you about the proxy issue. My deck didn't have any proxies, interestingly enough. But people were building proxy decks to literally fight my deck. And that was it. You know what I mean? And we basically got stuck in this arms race where, you know, I'm building more powerful decks. You know, the
I've
other
been
tier
there,
one
yeah.
player is doing it. And it eventually got to the point where it just was not fun anymore. No one was having
Yep.
fun. I'm not having
It's fun at
fun.
first when you do it because,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and then it got to a point, dude. So I know I've told this story before on my podcast, but that's how my Grand Arbiter deck basically got built. Was to
Yeah.
It was an arms race where we were all playing these powerful decks, and then it got to basically a point everybody's playing freaking stupid combo stuff, and I built Grand Arbiter to be pure control where none of y'all are going to do anything, and I'm going to win by the worst way possible by Approach of the Second Sun, and that's my only win con. Everything else is
Right?
to stop you from playing Magic. because it got to that
Right?
point where it was just it was annoying to a point, and yeah, so
Yeah, and I feel like that permeates a lot of. I should probably finish. I should probably tell you how my story ended, or else this comment
sure,
isn't going to make
sure.
sense. But I almost forgot. So eventually, yeah, we get into an arms race, as you've experienced in your own personal life, and I think it happens to a lot of EDH players. It happens to a lot of commander groups as a whole, and I'm sure it happens to a lot of Friday night Magic goers. Is that yeah, it eventually gets to the point where you don't want to keep up with the meta anymore, or the meta gets so stale and oppressive that it's just not worth playing. And we reached that point in my LGS. We ended up banning proxies, and we ended up banning prizes. There was no more prize support. There was
Ooh,
none. We
dang.
just got rid of it. And obviously, as you would guess, that didn't go well. People don't want to pay for, Friday Night Magic. They want to do a buy-in if there's no point, right? And we decided, ended up to mixing in a kind of like new idea of doing randomized rewards. So instead of congratulating players for winning, you got there were prizes that were given at random. There are prizes that are given for like friendliest player of the night, stuff like that. More community driven rewards. And within 2 weeks, we went from being like stuck in like CEDH hell to literally everyone is playing the single most jankiest thing they could humanly imagine to build. We all
Oh,
suddenly
that's
started
great.
shifting. Oh, it was amazing. We started shifting to fun decks because there was
But
no point in winning.
but that was due to your LGS though, right?
That was due to my LGS. They
So
had to come down real hard
yeah.
on this change. I mean, we came to it as like a group consensus, because it's more of a clubhouse than an LGS. Um,
No, but that's good because that's not gonna happen at a lot of LGSs.
it's not
Yeah.
because they'll lose customers,
Yeah.
you know. And my LGS does lose customers to that. We have people come in all the time on Fridays being like, "Oh, hey, you guys doing like an like EDH tournament? Like how many pods are there? And they'll be all excited and they hear about how the pricing works and they're like, "Oh," and
Yeah.
then they leave. And it's
Nah,
like,
yeah, I've been to
"All
those
right."
LGSs where it's, you know, and that when I used to go to a lot of LGSs, like you sort of knew which ones were the heavily competitive ones, full of the
Yeah.
heavy, and the more
Yeah.
casual ones. And I always enjoyed the more casual ones because it was always a lot more friendlier atmosphere and more chill, relaxed,
Exactly. Exactly.
and it was just I don't know, it was just more fun overall. Like,
Yeah, and that's the where my LGS is at. They want to be a clubhouse. They want to be a place where people plays games. They don't want to be a so much so that they're actually no longer even a LGS. They're a bar now. They renovated into being a bar just so that they could be like, hey, no minors. Uh, and
that's good.
have a little bit of a different ruling for how things can work and run. And now they're doing great. They're doing Warhammer tournaments, they're doing Magic tournaments, and they're doing all this stuff, and all of it's without prizing. All of it's with this more, well, it has prizing, but it's this alternate system that's more
You said it's
community
in
driven.
Portland, Oregon?
It's in Portland, yes. Thankfully, over here in Portland, we have, well, the Portland Vancouver metropolitan area, as it's called. We have
Oh, okay.
10 or 15 LGS. We have
Dang.
quite a few.
Nice.
Um,
Because I'll be in Portland in July.
yeah, we have some crazy stuff. I only go to one. I go to Fate and Fury Games,
Okay.
which is technically a pub, and it's over here in like downtown Vancouver or East Town Vancouver. It's across the river,
Oh,
but
so
it's
wait,
just
are
off the
Portland and
river.
Vancouver pretty close together?
They're one metropolitan zone.
Oh,
Um,
okay. This is
so
my complete ignorance of
yeah, so it's
over there.
New York City and fuck, what's the side in New Jersey? But you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of think like Manhattan and
Brooklyn or something.
Brooklyn. Yeah, it's very
Okay.
similar to that. You know, you just have to
Okay.
cross a river. You're still in the city, but now you're in a different city.
Okay, because I know I got to go to Portland in July, but I'll also be in Bend, Oregon as well too, which is like a
Mm.
3 hour drive, and I'm not looking
Yeah,
forward to
that's
that.
more south. It's very beautiful down there,
I
though.
know. I can't wait. I can't wait
Very
because
very
I've
nice, very
never
nice.
been. Well, I've been to the West Coast. I've been to LA, and that was okay. I was not a big fan of LA.
Yeah.
Um,
No, LA's a bit of a hellhole.
yeah, it was just the time I went because I went back in December. It was like the three smoggiest days they had or something. Like I felt like I
Yeah.
couldn't breathe outside because the air
Oh,
quality
geez.
was so bad.
That's pretty bad. It's a
Yeah,
lot nicer up here. It's a lot more trees, a lot more hills.
probably a lot cleaner air.
A lot cleaner air. The one problem we do have though, and it's actually specifically with LGSs, is that a lot of them do tend to be more um what's like a good word for this? Fancy? Fancier?
Ooh, fancy. Were
I
you
mean, because
saying
like
saying us Floridians aren't fancy?
no, but like we don't have like I've been to I've been to a lot of LGSs in my day,
Yeah, yeah,
and we used to have more out here. We used to have more like mom and pop kind of
yeah, yeah.
places, Technically they're like pawn shops or something. You know what I mean? We have like
Hmm.
these more hole in the wall kind of LGSs, but a lot of those kind of died off during the pandemic and
Oh
were even
yeah,
dying off before then. And so the ones that we do have left tend to be these more larger, more focused ones that do like specific things. Like Fate and Fury is a bar, and they focus primarily on like most of their sales come from drinks and like 3D prints, and I think mostly Warhammer, mostly because Warhammer's really expensive. But we also have like Mock Sporting House and other places
oh
like that
yeah. That's right.
that are these more
That's all. That's a fancy one.
bigger LGSs, we
Yeah.
don't have a lot of these small ones anymore. And the ones we do have are all like specific. They're all very specific. They either cater to kind of that tournament crowd or they cater wholly to the community crowd. They don't mix.
Yeah, there's we used to have a lot of mom and pop LGSs around here where I live in I live just north of Tampa, and
Oh, nice, nice.
it's now down to what used to be like maybe 7 to 10 is now down to 2,
Oh,
and
geez.
only I would only consider one of them even decent.
Yeah, yeah.
It was the one I
Oh,
went
oh,
to for pre-release for Streets of New Capenna. It was my only complaint about them is, oh my god, their chairs were god awful. It was so bad.
yeah.
Like, oh god, my hips
That
were
seems to be
hurting.
universal, though. I've noticed that every LGS I've ever gone to just has the worst chairs.
Yeah, it's
It's just insane.
yeah, the
And this,
the the kind of fancy LGS that I've been to around here in Florida would probably be Cool Stuff Games. They've
yeah,
got really nice area, and the thing that I love with Cool Stuff Games, yes, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I'm just gonna say they don't put up with shit. They are not afraid to throw you out if you
yeah,
try to start
yeah.
anything, and
Isn't
that's
isn't
great.
isn't cool stuff? They're more national too, aren't they?
I don't know if they're out of Florida. They have
Or am I,
like 3
or am I
locations in
conflicting?
Florida. I just
I've
know they're
I've
one of
heard of like Cool Stuff Inc.
yeah. There's Cool
Right?
Stuff Inc. and then Cool Stuff Games is their LGS.
They're LGS. Yeah, similar to like Card Kingdom and
Yeah,
mods. Yeah.
yeah. They're I think. Oh, they've got. Okay, never mind. I thought they only had 3 locations in Florida. They've got 6.
Oh, they're expanding. That's
Damn.
nice. Yeah, I pulled it up too. It does look like they're expanding out a bit. Oh, that's good though. That's good though. They're keeping it going.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm surprised they are still. Some of them are still up, especially after the pandemic. Well, it's Florida. The pandemic ended summer of 2020 anyway. So
No, I know.
did you hear that Dr. Fauci officially said we're out of the pandemic in the U.S.?
I did not.
Yeah, there was a news article saying that the U.S. is out of the pandemic phase, and my first comment to that is the rest of the U.S. is now going to finally catch up to Florida, because Florida's been out of the pandemic phase for almost 2 years now.
Right. Well, it's good that things are turning around a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to get too into the whole pandemic and vaccines and
Right.
masks and all that, because it's, I don't know.
Then we get a different kind of audience commenting.
Oh yeah, they'll. I don't freaking know. I'm vaccinated. I'm boosted. I don't know if I have to get a fourth booster or not. If I do, I'll go get it. I'll wear a mask if I have to, but
Goddamn third one was brutal.
actually, the third one wasn't bad for me. The second one knocked me out.
Yeah, see, for me, the first and second one, nothing. My wife, dying. She gets the third one, fine. Totally fine. I get the third one, oh my lord. It was like,
Man, that's crazy.
3-4 days, and I just on the floor. It's bad.
Man, it's crazy like how the effects of it is just so different per person, because my wife was really down after the first one, and then the second one she was fine.
Yeah.
And
It's
my
random.
kids no issues for either shot. Like, you little shits.
Right? Oh.
And the third one, I just felt like tired for 2 days, and that was it.
Right? This got me scared though to get a fourth if needed.
I mean, if that's what we got to do to just get back to normal, I'll freaking do it. Do I want to do it? No, because I have a fear of needles, like an ungodly fear of needles. But I'll do it. I'm not happy.
Yeah.
Just like if I have to wear a mask, I'll freaking wear it. I don't want to, but I'll do it.
I just kept wearing mine.
It depends where I'm going. Like, I'll be honest, it's if I know I'm going somewhere where I know there's going to be a lot of people, I'll wear a mask. If not, then I won't. I mean,
That's pretty much where I'm at. And I think a lot of people are kind of going to be moving forward with that. And realistically, it's not that different from what the rest of the world already does. I mean, especially in like Asian countries, wearing a mask when you're sick or wearing a mask in crowds is not uncommon.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That's one thing that I'm definitely taking away from the pandemic is I won't be afraid to wear a mask if I have to go out sick.
yeah,
And all
yeah,
that.
yeah, definitely. That's where I'm at too. If I feel like I need to wear a mask, you best believe I'm slapping that thing on.
Yeah.
Because it's different. Things have changed. Yeah, and
Yeah, and the whole thing with wearing masks at an airport. I mean, I don't know. I'm about to be traveling very soon in the next 2 weeks, so it's
well, it might come back.
yeah.
It might come back because apparently that Florida judge might not have had the
I'll
authority
probably
to do that, but
yeah. I don't know.
We'll
The one thing I did notice that I did like wearing a mask on the plane was it helped me be able to sleep on the plane better. The times that I had to travel with a mask on the plane.
interesting.
It was weird. It was like the feeling of my own breath on me just
No, that makes sense. That
helped
makes
me
sense.
go to sleep, especially because I always wear AirPods to cancel out the noise and just put on
Yeah.
some music, and I don't know. It was weird.
Could probably help you. Yeah, probably just helps you feel more comfortable, kind of
Yeah.
thing. I've noticed that too when I wear masks. Feels a little bit more, almost like a social barrier kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't have to smile at people.
You have to smile. A little bit less maintenance.
That is one thing that I enjoyed the most with the mask. I did hate wearing a mask the most during the summer, the 2 summers in Florida of the pandemic.
Oh,
'Cause
I bet.
it was
Oh, my Lord.
freaking brutal.
I
Like
bet.
either a cloth mask or N95 or whatever have you. Fucking miserable. And
I-
granted, it's we didn't wear them a lot outside because you.
Right.
But the times that you did, because you're trying to get from one building to another, just
A bit surprising, yeah.
god awful.
I've only ever been to Florida once, and it was during the summer,
Yeah, it's
and it
bad.
was terrible.
Yeah, it's
It was
bad.
so
It's
hot. It was so humid. Not great.
so like even lately, it's been getting really humid. It's not even summer yet, and because I try to go for daily walks, try
Yeah.
to at least,
Well,
because I need to
good.
lose this freaking pandemic weight, and damn, the heat is just getting too much, and it's like I'll do a 2 mile walk, and I'm like dying when I get home because it's just so hot. But if I do that same walk in the morning, do 2 miles, I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably a lot of the humidity.
Yeah, it has to be the humidity plus the heat. Because like during the week, I can only do my walks like in the afternoon or evening, and that's when
Yeah.
sometimes it gets the most humid.
Ooh. See, I have the I have a different issue up here. It just rains constantly and makes figuring out when to take a walk kind of hard because it's like,
Yeah,
all
I
right, do
bet.
I
I
go
bet.
now when it's not raining, but it's sunny and kind of hot, or do I wait a little bit and it
Oh,
might be
dude.
raining?
Dude, we have those problems during the summertime, like for 4 or 5 months, where like on the dot, like around 3 to 5 o'clock, it's guaranteed to rain. Um, and and of course it could go on later into the evening and all that, past 6 and 7. But it
Right.
could be, a normal rain shower or oh my god, it's hurricane force like winds kind of
Yeah.
rain. It's never just a middling rain where it's normal. Florida is either Florida's just too extreme.
Too extreme, man. Yeah, thankfully we don't have too much of a problem like that here. We just have different severities of rain just constantly going on. Sometimes it hails just
Oh, that's
casually,
the worst.
and that's fun. But anyways,
Man, like if it ever starts hailing here in Florida, um that's when oh shit, there's probably a tornado nearby.
yeah, I would assume that would be like devastating levels of weather down there.
Yeah. What the
Yeah.
heck, cat? What's your problem? Oh no, my cat just started freaking out. She's been laying on the desk right next to me the entire time. Then she just, I don't know. Maybe she is hearing a bird outside or something.
Maybe.
No, but all right, getting back into something a little bit more important. Um,
Yeah.
changing subjects here. Before we start ending things here, because I know you have to pick up your partner soon, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I think.
about an hour, hour and a half.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, I got a little bit of time.
So, let's talk about a little indie game called Final Fantasy XIV.
You know,
Uh,
I've heard it has a free trial up to level
I know
60,
you were gonna do this.
including both the award-winning expansion Heaven's Word and the entirety of the base game, A Realm Reborn.
No shit. You can play for free up to level 60 and experience all the
For
content.
free. Not only up to level 60 in every single class. They call them jobs in the game. Um, and you can have as many jobs as you want on one character.
So you don't have to start an alt, and you and it's a free trial, no limits, no
There's no
limitation,
limits. There's no
or
limit.
no
Well,
time limits, I mean.
no time limit. You are banned from the market board to prevent botting,
Darn it.
obviously. But yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, it's
So I see you've heard of it.
a little bit, a little bit. You can see my camera, right?
Yeah.
All right, hold on one second. So I'm just pulling out something from my shelf.
All right,
And
chat. Now's
you've
the
probably
time.
seen this, but just to show the viewers who like watching my podcast from YouTube for whatever reason, I've got those few dedicated listeners slash viewers that only listen to my stuff on YouTube when the majority of my downloads is audio. But I actually bought the original collector's
Ooh.
edition when it came out, for Final Fantasy XIV, and I only played it for, I don't even think I lasted a month
It
after I
was
spent.
really, really, really bad when it came out.
Yeah, it was. I think I started a. You may have to correct me because I do not remember. I think I started a Gladiator in Ulda, and
Gosh, I think that's right.
I,
I can't remember if
I
that's right for the original though.
yeah, like I can't remember, to be honest. I just know I started in Ulda, and
Yeah.
it I fucking it was awful.
See, it is awful, and it gets really interesting too. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a wonderful YouTube channel called. Ooh, that's beautiful. There's a wonderful
It's a
YouTube
little
channel.
journal that you can fill in.
Yeah, called what is it? No Clip, and they did a documentary on
I
the
need
Honor
to
Realm
watch
Reborn.
that. Yes, I need to.
Yeah, and it was very interesting to learn that initially they were going to be doing, I think it was like something like 10 or 12 starting cities.
Oh my
And
god.
that one quote alone told me more about the development of the game than literally anything else, because it shows that they fundamentally did not understand how to make an online game.
Yeah.
Because it's just, why would you have 12 three starting cities is already kind of pushing it, because you're running into problems with people who want to play together. But 12 is just insane, because even in the base game, you couldn't interact really with other players. Like, if you started in a different city and you and I started the game at the same time, our characters really wouldn't be able to do anything together until level 20.
Yeah,
Which is just
and that's
insane.
about. And if you do just straight MSQ, and depending on your speed too, like for someone brand new, that could be 5 to 10 hours of gameplay before you even start leaving the main city area.
Yeah, and that gets me thinking, if they were under the impression that 12 starting cities, one for each starting job, would make sense for an online game, just shows me that they really didn't quite understand what they were doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the whole summary of like the original version of the game to begin with, like the whole, like the model issues, for example, with like there's no level of detail on them, which is just insane to think about.
I'll be honest, there's so much I don't remember about 1.0 because I only played a month of it and I just hated it.
I never played it when it was out. I have played 1.0 on a private server.
See, that's what I want to do, just to.
And it's fun. It's fun.
But you can't even play the story though, right? On private server.
You can't play the story.
That's the only reason why I'd want to do it.
Yeah, a lot of the quests don't work, and it's basically stuck in the end times, like a little bit before Dalamud hit. So it's okay, and it's fun and interesting to play around with, to kind of just see like all this old content.
Yeah, see what the zones used to look like, and
yeah, and that's fun, but it's you can definitely see a lot of the fundamental design flaws at play, because there's just so many things that even not knowing about game development, or even going in and playing it knowing nothing about how like design works or anything, you can immediately tell that there's problems. When you open up the map and it looks like someone just copy and pasted a zone like 16 times, you can immediately tell like something's wrong here. Something doesn't make sense. Playing it almost feels like playing like a nightmare version of the game. It's very weird.
Yeah, but when did you start playing 14?
I started playing 14 when Heaven's Word finished.
Oh, so you've been playing it for a while now.
Yeah, right. So right before Stormblood came out, I remember signing up and then playing, and then Stormblood came out, and I was upset that they removed like 3 or 4 of my skills, and I didn't understand why. And then like I stopped playing for a bit because I was really heated about it. And then I ended up coming back to it, I think like 6 months before Shadowbringers came out, and he was even more upset that like there were more changes, and I was like, what is happening?
Oh wow.
But it was really with Shadowbringers coming out that I actually started playing very regularly as like my main MMO. Before that, I was primarily playing Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2, and there wasn't a lot of like to draw me to convince me to like stop playing Guild Wars and instead play Final Fantasy because really before Shadowbringers, the game was different. The game was very, very different. And having to like manage stamina and stuff in
Oh,
like an
that's
MMO,
right.
yeah,
I remember
was
that.
very weird. It was very weird. I felt like I was playing Final Fantasy. I did. I felt like I was playing like a good version of like Final Fantasy 13 or Final Fantasy Zodiac Age or something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it felt great. But then when it came to like doing dungeons or doing raids, it felt like I was trying to play a game that wanted to be a single player game that they felt like they needed to add dungeons to. And
Mm.
it wasn't until Shadowbringers came out and they got rid of stamina, they standardized all of the skills, all of the jobs, they created a more they I shouldn't say created, they re-enhanced what's the word, revitalized like the tombstone system and stuff like that, and they made the game much more approachable. And I felt like at that point the game was significantly better, just way better. And I finally sat down and went through actually finishing up the Stormblood story, and that was great. And kind of just went from there, and the game's really just gotten better. I don't even play any other MMOs anymore. Like
Oh, I
I don't
know.
play Destiny, I don't play Guild Wars, and it's because I just have a lot more of a value for Final Fantasy. It's more respecting of my time, and I like that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because
you
it's
know, playing Guild Wars actually a good example is Destiny. I there's some spicy takes for your viewers. Um, I don't like Destiny. I really don't. I love the
I
world.
loved it at first. I loved Destiny
Yeah, see,
1.
me too. I've been playing since the beta. I've been in the beta for both one and two.
I
Um,
loved Destiny 2 at first, but
right?
God,
Me
just
too. I deleted my account
oh
two
damn.
months ago. And the reason was,
I don't even remember my
this whole
account.
time I've been cheering for Bungie to like make the game that they want to make, and they finally got out of being controlled by Activision, and they're finally making the game that they want to make, and they can't seem to really understand or give the players a solid direction as to what it is that they want to do to monetize the game. They added season passes, and they have different levels to the
Mm,
season pass. They have different systems to that. They have this kind of FOMO story system in place, and on top of that,
yeah,
you
yeah.
have to buy expansions, and there's a cash shop, and like all these, and it's like they're trying to figure out how to make the game profitable, but they don't want to commit fully to one idea. And this is what I like about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy adds content. They add they do they add content in the same way Destiny does. They release a patch. The patch has a bunch of new story stuff, maybe some new gameplay features. Um and it's great. Now there's even a season pass for PvP. It's though Final Fantasies isn't paid, at least
Yeah, it's all
not
free.
yet. Uh and it
Yeah,
probably
not
never
yet.
will be paid, but that gets into my later point. But what Destiny does that Final Fantasy doesn't is they remove the content. Stuff becomes
Yeah.
irrelevant in Destiny.
That's
You
same
can
with World of Warcraft too.
Same with World of Warcraft. It's this idea of borrowed power, it's this idea of borrowed systems, it's the idea that you're playing a game and you're being told your character is some sort of basically this god tier one of a kind hero, essentially, right? I
Hmm.
mean, it's a little bit different in WoW, I get it, but it's a little bit different in Destiny too. But at the end of the day, that's essentially who your character is. Your character is supposed to be this important person that's in these high level talks, you're in these high level negotiations, you're dealing with high level governmental stuff, and you have to grind out 20 creatures to get a new weapon. It's like that feeling of being restart every patch, every story beat is just kind of, it gets to the point where it's like,
You
I
got to
don't care,
click 20 bear asses again, and I just saved the
right?
world.
You get to the point where it's like, I don't care. I don't care. I
Yeah.
just don't care. I don't want to. I don't want. I love the story. I love the world. I want to know where this is going. But the game is doing everything in its power to make me just not care.
Yeah.
And Final Fantasy doesn't do that. And it's kind of one of the first real MMOs I've ever played that really doesn't do this. They have events. They have very small events that do reoccur, that do have this fear of missing out, this FOMO. But other than that, nothing else has this. There's no irrelevancy to your character at any point.
Or any of the
You
content,
or any of the
because
content.
one of my favorite systems that 14 does is the duty roulette and the wondrous tales. And for people who have no
Yeah.
idea what we're talking about, the duty roulette, um I was a huge WoW player since the beginning. From I think I started in 2005.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and
Pre-finders, yeah.
it this was so duty roulette is like WoW's equivalent of looking for dungeon, looking for group, where you automatically queue up for a dungeon. But duty roulette is pretty much expands that to all dungeons, all raids, all trials, which are sort of like mini raids in a sense, if you're trying to
Yeah.
compare.
It's just the boss fight.
Yeah, just the boss fight. And you could be queued up and go into any raid from the very beginning of the game up until what's current, and you get special bonuses for doing that. And Wondrous Tales, once again, it opens up to where once a week you have 9 chances to get stuff, to get extra
Yeah.
cosmetic stuff,
Yeah.
or gold or whatever. And what you do is you got to complete other duties, which is once again old raids, certain dungeon levels, certain PvP events,
Yeah.
stuff like that, and it keeps it fresh.
Yeah, and they actually double down on that because you can have you can have multiple jobs on one character. Going back and doing those old dungeons, even as your high level job, you still earn equipment and currencies that are relevant to the jobs that you are still
That's true.
still
Yes.
leveling. And they create this kind of this interesting feedback loop where there's multiple systems in play that encourage you to do the old content. The old content is never irrelevant. Worst case scenario, you do it, you get some tomestones, which for people who don't play are like high level currency. They're basically what dungeon currency is in Guild Wars.
Yeah.
I think WoW has a similar concept for
Yeah.
raid
And
currency.
WoW, when WoW had the badge system or the points. I think it's a point system now.
I think it's similar to points, yeah. But these tomestones you can get if you're playing a max level job. You get max level raid tier tomestones. You get raid currency for doing these dungeons with low level players. And if you switch to your low level job, you get tomestones relevant to that level. So you can go and purchase high level top tier equipment from NPC vendors without having to worry about grinding out dungeons or anything.
Yeah.
And it makes this whole thing a lot more simpler. Uh, Well, actually, I would say both simpler and more complex at the same time because it's a loop. You do the main story quest to get more dungeons, and you get more dungeons to get more content, and that content just builds on itself. Um, a good comparison is to Guild Wars with their fractal system. Um, it's very similar. It's very similar to the duty roulette fractals, but
Okay.
fractals have a huge, huge negative, and it's that once you reach a certain fractal level, they're based on tiers. You basically have like it's like 20-ish dungeons, And then once you complete those 20, you have 20 more that are the same dungeon, but in like a variation, like a harder mode. And it goes on like that for I think like 3 or 4 tiers. And there's no reason at all in Guild Wars to ever do, once you have gotten to the equipment to do a higher level fractal, there is no incentive at all to do any of the lower level dungeons. You get nothing.
Yeah.
You get rewards that you can, I don't know, scrap for crafting materials. It's painful because it encourages people to be very toxic to new players because they want to do item level, or I don't remember what they call it, aether level or something. I don't know, something like that. But like they want to do fractal level 100. You know what I mean? They don't want to do the intro stuff. Whereas Final Fantasy just doesn't have that problem, and it gets even more compounded because you run into, because doing these lower level dungeons is fun and rewarding, you get players who just go in there to help. You get stuff like the mentors who are just volunteers who get priority queuing access to these low level dungeons with the idea that they'll teach people how to do them. And they do it well. I've never had, in my almost 2,000 hours of Final Fantasy, I've never had a dungeon experience where I've gone in and where I've not known how to do something. I ask, no one's ever been toxic to me. I've never had someone tell me to go look it up on the wiki. I've never had someone,
same.
I've never had someone leave the party because, I'm the tank and I don't know how to do a certain boss. No, they'll sit there and explain it to me. And then oftentimes will be in doing the boss that I don't know how to do, and they'll be giving me reminder cues. And you can, for viewers, you can place in the game markers for your other party members to see. And a lot of times people use those in bosses to teach people where to go, how to dodge things, where to avoid AoEs and stuff. And that's interesting because I haven't seen that in any other game. I haven't seen this level of non-toxic community interaction in any game.
Yeah, and I want to specify, it's not to say there's no toxicity in 14.
Oh, no, there is.
I've come across some, and it's like you say, I've never come across a dungeon where someone wasn't willing to help. But I mean, I've come across where, you get the DPS and healer going back and forth, they're fighting, and stuff like that. I mean, stuff like that happens.
That's not to say stuff doesn't happen, but 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10 or something, 4 times out of 5. A lot of Final Fantasy interactions tend to be more positive, a lot more helping.
And coming from WoW, it completely took me by surprise, like how friendly, for the most part, everyone is. I coming from Guild Wars, I initially, when I was doing it, I remember this very vividly. I was doing a level 60 raid. It was my first time, and I was doing a pickup group. Right, I was just a random healer in it, and I had done raids before, so I kind of knew what I was doing. But I was missing. I was doing something wrong. Oh, there you are.
Huh?
Oh no, it sounded like I lost you for a second there.
Oh, yeah, it's starting to get really rainy here, so.
Okay.
But basically, I was casting a spell, and it was causing the aggro to shift from the tank to me. Not supposed to do that, right? I was supposed to be casting the spell after the tank had engaged the group. No one got mad at me. No one even told me for the first like segment. We did the first boss. We get to like midway through it, and the other healer sent me a private message explaining to me in detail the problem.
Oh wow!
And it was very nice. They're like, hey, you may not know this. Regen causes like a provocation effect. It's not really stated in the skill. It's kind of something you have to notice and pick up. And I replied to him like, oh, hey man, dude, I'm a little bit new to this. Super sorry. I didn't notice. And I changed it and it was fine. No one had any issues. And I even got player accommodations at the end of the thing. And to me, that was was crazy because I initially thought the other player was trying to scam me or something. Because
Oh, yeah.
I had never like I was really wary for like the rest of the raid. I was like, what's going on here? I was like keeping an eye out on chat. I'm like, I ain't gonna give them nothing because like every other MMO I've ever played, if you have a player just randomly being nice to you, it's because they want you to join their guild or you
Oh,
know what I mean? They're
yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
scam you or some shit. And it's like, no, this is just a random positive interaction. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Super weird, but cool.
It is. It's even like the random interactions I have in cities, just I'll randomly go up to someone and emote, pet them or something. And
Yeah.
then sometimes I can start a whole conversation with someone and,
Yeah, it starts like a
you know,
whole thing, and yeah, I do that too. I run into that all the time. I'll just be hanging out in a city, and then someone comes up and they're doing like a dance next to me, and then I start dancing and skip two, and then we got like 3 4 bards playing, and we're just having a chat about like fucking
yeah.
pasta or something, and it's just
Yeah, and
it's
it
nice.
sound for people who are on the outside who don't play 14. It sounds dumb, but it for stuff like that is so important for building that cohesive community uh that I keep comparing it to WoW because that's the MMO I've played the most. That WoW completely lost that like 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's actually what I was going to point out too. Final Fantasy, the way its mechanics are fresh and new. The way it functions is very modern, but its community and the way it's run and the way the mods handle it and the way it's monetized is very much like early World of Warcraft. It's very much like the old MMOs before
Yeah,
social media, before this
dude,
kind
you're
of push.
100% correct. Yeah.
And it's community driven, and it's not because Final Fantasy lacks any of these modern stuff. I mean, it has literally its own Facebook, it has its own social media site,
Oh yeah,
the,
that's
the,
right.
the
That's right.
lodestone.
Yeah, I forget
And
about
it
that.
has yeah, and it has massive communities on Reddit and Twitter, and it has several wikis, and it has this huge community. um but no one's pushing anyone to have to be a part of that community, which you see a lot in World of Warcraft. You see a lot in Guild Wars. People would be like, just look it up on the wiki. Well, how
Yep.
come your guild didn't tell you what to do? And it's like, well, my guy, like, not all of us are, super tryhards at the game. Some of us play casually,
Yeah, exactly.
and
It's
even then, that's just an extreme case. But it's weird. And I never thought like Destiny would have this problem either, but it's the same problem I ran into Destiny. I never wanted to do content with people because it was always terrible. Everyone was always complaining, you know.
yeah.
So going meta, and it's like, my dude, difference between like 4 games and like thousands of games a second doesn't matter. But people
Yeah.
people will leave a group because so and so has the wrong Titan ability equipped, and it's just like, come on, man, like, what are you doing? It's a game. It's chill. But I don't know. Some people take these stuff pretty hard. So
Yeah, it's I don't know. I've been playing it nonstop for almost a year now and I'm freaking obsessed. I still love it. It's Endwalker, the MSQ. The MSQ altogether is amazing because as I've gotten older, I care more about story and characters in
yeah,
games. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, I don't want to play a game, the gameplay is god awful and all that, but
Right. But
it,
but you want characters that are meaningful.
yeah, and
Yeah.
14 has every bit of that. If you really care about story, yeah, can it be a slog sometimes? Yes. There are times
Oh yeah.
where the MSQ, just when you think you're done with the quest, oh look, another fucking 5 to 10 minute cutscene. You're like, oh
Right.
god, and it's midnight, or it's almost 1 o'clock, and you're like, oh god, I'm trying so hard not to skip the cutscene because I'm about to fall asleep.
Right. I've run into that quite a few times actually. It's interesting because the game is almost like an anime.
Yeah,
It
that's
it,
a good
it
way
it
to put it.
feels
Yeah,
like yeah, it feels like not just, I wouldn't say in story beats. Its story beats ramp up rather well.
Yeah,
Um, it doesn't go immediately 0 to 60, like an episode of Dragon Ball or something.
because it's
But
pretty small stakes at the very beginning.
it's pretty small. It's pretty small stakes for like a lot of it, really. Um, it really isn't until midway through like the third expansion where things really start getting like, hey, we gotta go. Not a spoiler, but like, hey, we gotta go kill a handful of gods or something, and it's like, yeah, I guess we do. But I've always equated it to kind of like an anime where there are several of these animes, One Piece, Naruto, Bleach or whatever, that just have just hundreds of episodes, almost 1,000+ episodes,
Yeah,
and they just keep going. Even though I think I just named two that have finished, but you get my point. It's one of these massive, massive stories, and it's fun to come back to. It's fun to see where the story's gone,
yeah,
and
and watch the cutscenes again for all throughout the expansions and
right, watch the cutscenes, and thankfully they've added a lot more support for New Game Plus and the whole uh, uh, unending journey, and that's what it's
yeah,
called,
yeah.
the tome or whatever. They also recently added, I don't know if you've gotten to it yet, but if you finish the current expansion and you start the new patch content, you actually get a codex that gives summaries of
Yes, I
important
got that.
events and
Yeah,
characters. And I'm very glad they added that because it's getting
I
to the
actually
point
forgot
where
all about it. Thanks for
quite a bit
reminding me.
in, right? I gotta know. I don't know if it tells me when it updates or not, so I just gotta
I
check
got to
it
look
every
at
now
it
and
next
then,
time I log in now.
right? Because it might have updated on you. Um, but again, it's interesting is that the game, it has all of the features you would want in an MMO, and I find it interesting is that I would probably not recommend the game for people who like MMOs
Yeah,
because
it
it really isn't anymore.
no, and you're I would agree with that. Like if you cannot handle playing base essentially a single player game in an MMO,
Yeah,
it's
a
not
Final
for you.
Fantasy game.
Yeah, it's not for you. Like the story and world are freaking amazing and fantastic. Everybody always complains about A Realm Reborn. Yes, out of all of them, it is the weakest one, but
They've been
there's
fixing it.
there are times even in the story of A Realm Reborn, it got me. Like it really captured my attention. Like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? You know, um,
Right? Like that first
especially
fight with Ifrit. Ooh,
oh my gosh,
ooh,
yeah,
beautiful.
dude, like yeah, the time when you fight all the primals and when you
Right?
go to the Waking Sands at a certain event and it's playing
Oh
that
yeah, it's devastating. Yeah.
that
Oh
eerie
yeah.
music and dude that part like that's when the game sort of like clicked for me where I'm like oh shit this isn't going to be a typical game is it.
Right?
Look,
Me too. I when I got to that point, I was like, up until then, I was just thinking, all right, we're just doing an MMO story.
yeah,
We're
that's what
gonna
I
get
thought
to the
too.
end, and we're gonna be like
We're
the
gonna
warrior
fight the
of
big
light or
boss
something.
and
Yeah,
you know
we're gonna kill a god, and everyone's gonna be happy. And then you get to midway, or it's not really midway. It's like 70% way through the story, and it's like, no, that's not what we're doing. It's like,
yeah
oh my.
and then
Ooh.
from that point on like I was hooked before that but when that story beat happened I'm like oh that's it I'm completely hooked I need to see this till the end and thank god I did because Heaven's Ward people complain about Stormblood but I fucking loved every bit of Stormblood the story.
It's real good. It's real good. But that being said, yeah, if someone's interested in like purely the gameplay aspects of it, the MMO aspects of it, they're gonna hate the game because you have to do the story. You have everything is behind the story. Literally everything, all of the
Yeah,
features, and that can be real not what people want. And I feel like that's probably going to be long term kind of detrimental to the game. Um, And they look to be kind of trying to fix that with the next expansion and moving more towards being a live service single player game than being so focused on the multiplayer aspect, which
Yeah.
hopefully turns out well. We'll see how that
And hopefully
goes.
they don't screw it up,
But I mean, technically, World of Warcraft's going in the same direction.
yeah.
They've been focusing more and more on single player content. Same thing with Guild Wars. And I mean, Destiny's literally a single player game.
I mean, World of Warcraft, like Shadow, dude, I don't know. That past few expansions, like they were just such messes. Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands were just such
Right?
garbage.
Well, when you look at the new stuff that's coming out, though, they seem to be really wanting to get that single player gameplay loop really working. And
Yeah, it's
whether or not that's going to work, I don't know,
I
because they seem to be just directly copying Guild Wars. And
well, not only that, but the problem
Mm.
with WoW is just what you can do in the game. The game is designed for you to rush to max level and rush to get the best gear as quickly as possible. I don't know how they're going
Right.
to fix that big foundation because 14 isn't really like that. I mean, yeah,
14 isn't like that, and that's one of the more interesting parts of it. Guild Wars isn't like that either. Both games, and WoW included in this, all three games are like way better at max level. There's more stuff to do at max level, but I think Final Fantasy really kind of keys home that getting to max level isn't important.
yeah.
It's the journey along the way. Whereas you run into
No,
something
and
like
that
Guild Wars, where the game literally starts only after max level. The everything before that's literally just the tutorial. The entire base game is just the tutorial, which is insane. Um, and they're running into the same issues that Warcraft is running into, is that you can only do horizontal expansion so long. You can only have so many of these skill trees and stuff to max out before it just becomes another checklist, another thing that someone has to do to get to whatever the end game meta is. And whether or not Warcraft's going to be able to fix that, I think is going to be the primary thing that determines whether or not the game stays relevant in the next 5 years.
yeah.
Because they're already dying. They've been hemorrhaging for years. They're at the point where World of Warcraft makes significantly less money than Call of Duty, but costs significantly more to make.
Mm-hmm.
So Blizzard Activision is probably at some point gonna come to the realization that let's put Warcraft on life support and stop making new content for it because it's just not profitable.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you're spot on with that. And like I said, even though I don't play WoW anymore, it's I still follow it because I enjoy the story, I enjoy the lore, and just the whole lore of Shadowlands was garbage. But I watched the whole stream where they were announcing the new expansion, and dude,
yeah,
that was the most lackluster expansion announcement I've ever
oh
seen in the
geez,
history of WoW. That was just
that's interesting because I myself haven't played since Burning Crusade.
mm-hmm.
Been many, many, many years at this point.
Yeah.
I actually watched that announcement and I was relatively excited for the content they were adding. Not because I would ever, try it or anything, but because it seemed like they were legitimately trying at least something different, at least trying things that other games have done that have succeeded, and they're trying to adapt those. And to me, that's a lot like old Blizzard. That's a lot like what they used to do back in the 90s and early aughts, where they would basically,
Mm-hmm.
steal a concept of a game and just make the best version of that concept. You know,
I,
that's
I guess I
essentially.
just don't have any faith in them since for two
I
expansions in a
don't either,
row they
but
have completely fucked up. Yeah, yeah, and here's the caveat, or not caveat, but here's the thing though. But the past two expansions they've done, Shadowlands and Battle for Azeroth, the expansion only ever gets good when the very last patch they release for that game. So
yeah,
so for like the past two expansions, it's been of that mindset, you might as well not even buy it or sub until the very last patch, because that's when it actually is good.
Yeah. I personally haven't looked too much into it, but I've heard a lot of that anecdotally that it feels like they rush out an expansion
Yep,
and
always.
they incorporate all of these negative systems to keep players engaged. And then it isn't until, a year in or something where they finally go, all right, we're fixing the systems and we're giving the players what they want. And it's like, yeah, are you, and it gets to the point where it's like, yeah, as developers, are you doing that intentionally to placate
They
your
have
players?
to be. They have to be.
Or, yeah, or are
There's
you
no other
doing it
way.
intentionally as marketing, And I feel
It's
like
got
it's
to be
marketing.
both. I feel like it's both to
I
because
feel like it's more marketing because they're essentially just abusing players. They're tricking them into giving them this everlasting cycle of hope.
oh
Oh,
no,
we'll fix it soon.
yeah, because it's. I mean, it's been very long known. Not even just the past two expansions, but in order to like really keep up in WoW, like if you want to be the best and all that, you have to log in daily, you have to do a certain amount of things every week, and you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
to be the best. So it's that predatory.
And
um,
that's how it's made. And it gets a little frustrating when people try to like be apologists for it and be like, no, see, they're fixing it. And it's like, yeah, but they're the ones who made the system to begin with. They
yeah, so
have the data. They have the user data. It's insane to me to think someone like Blizzard Activision wouldn't know exactly the kind of features they're putting in. You know
yeah.
what I mean?
Oh,
They
of
know
course
exactly
they
what
know
they're.
exactly what they're doing, and that's why I don't have any faith in this new expansion that they're doing. And this is what they do
Reasonable.
every single time, that they're coming out of the gate with all these awesome new features that players have been wanting. Like, they want to return to talent trees. They, the whole customizing your dragon mount, that sounds cool and all, because it's
Yeah,
from Guild Wars 2, which is fine.
from Guild Wars. Yeah.
um modernizing the UI, fixing account wide stuff, for your alt characters. But
Too little, too late.
it's not just too little too late, but it's like, how much of it is actually going to be in the game, and how much of it is actually going to be the way that the players are thinking it's going to be, and how badly is Blizzard still going to fuck it up?
Right. Nah, that's true. It's true. You also got to think, all right, well, if they're fixing this system, how is that going to interact with everything else?
And as like most MMOs, they go heavy with changing a lot of classes, whenever a new expansion comes out, to try to keep it fresh.
Yeah.
And that has had an extremely poor track record for the past couple expansions, where some classes are straight up broken, or just not viable in endgame, and they don't fix them for like a year.
Yeah. 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 I've seen that a lot. I've heard about that a lot. I've seen it. I see it all the time in Guild Wars, or used to see it all the time in Guild Wars because
Yeah.
they have skill trees and stuff, and so it's possible to make and you can also equip equipment not meant for you and stuff like that. So you can make a non-viable build. It isn't hard, but it's interesting that that Warcraft is constantly kind of fumbling it. They're constantly having that issue of not
Yeah.
being able to really balance their stuff because they're always fiddling with it. And when you contrast that and compare it to Final Fantasy, which never does that, I mean, they revise their classes, yeah,
And they do balance the classes, like,
but
I mean,
yeah, but they try to keep it the same. You know what
well,
I mean?
one of the things that I love that 14 does compared to WoW, because I love PvP, right? And
Yeah.
the way that
Oh,
14
the
does
new PvP is
PvP,
so nice.
where yeah, the changes to PvP is great, but what they do is they essentially, each class, like your Dragoon, they act totally different compared to PvE and
And they
PvP.
they created a PvP specific build, and
Yeah, and WoW doesn't have that. So for the
WoW does
longest
not have that. It's
time,
true.
um, the reason why they fiddle so much is they're also trying to balance PvP with the same exact skills, and that are used exactly the same way
Yeah,
that you
which
would in
which is impossible
PvE.
to do.
It is. So there's
Yeah,
always going to be
it's.
something broken.
I was hoping they would learn from Guild Wars because Guild Wars, basically Final Fantasy's new PvP system is lifted literally directly from Guild Wars PvP
Oh, and I
system.
think it's great. It's
And it's
freaking
great. It is great. I think Guild Wars, the only thing I really, really like about Guild Wars, besides its mount system, is its PvP. Its PvP is like its own game mode. Each class functions differently. There's everyone's max level. Equipment doesn't matter. There's there's battle passes, but you unlock them by doing dungeons and stuff, you know? And
yeah,
Final Fantasy is really similar. It's not a paid battle pass. Jobs are unique to PvP. It's a more limited tool set. Equipment doesn't matter. Level doesn't matter. And it's like playing a completely different plane. It's like playing a Final Fantasy version of Overwatch. It's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
It's
Or
refreshing.
like League of Legends or something, or a
Yeah, yeah.
MOBA. In a sense,
Or
well,
a
you're not
MOBA.
leveling in like you would, but
Yeah, you don't pick up equipment or
yeah.
anything.
But yeah, Overwatch is a good example.
Overwatch, I think Overwatch is a better example, at least in terms of
Yeah,
how the characters function, because you have a set determined amount of skills, and
yeah,
you have like an ultimate, and you have class roles, and they did the system differently. And Final Fantasy's PvP used to be more similar to WoW's. I mean, you still had PvP specific skills, but they were trying to have each job be almost one to one to its PvP version, and that was just insane because some of the jobs are very easy to play. Some of the jobs are very quick combos, where then you have some of them like Ninja, where it's not. You're keying in commands. You're basically typing in your spells, and doing that in PvP was just a death sentence.
yeah.
It's too slow. You couldn't compete. And now they changed it to it's just one button. It's one button. It combos with itself. Beautiful.
Sweet. Yeah, exactly.
And
Oh man.
for viewers, it may sound like they're oversimplifying these things, but you gotta understand when it's this quick, actiony gameplay, you want it simple. You want it
Yeah,
straightforward.
you don't want to have like 20 million buttons to have to press.
Yeah, and I assume that's probably the larger problem that's going on in WoW, is that you have these complex classes, you have these complex interactions, and then balancing them for raid level content is going to be very different from balancing them against it themselves in
Yeah,
PvP.
it's I know PvP has changed in WoW, but it I don't know. Someone who probably currently plays WoW PvP can answer a lot better, but that's what I recall from
Yeah.
back when I was a heavy player of it. But
It's just it's disappointing,
you know,
seeing WoW
because I
go from
want WoW to
this.
be good, like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would
no,
love
yeah.
to be able to go back and play it because I loved the game, right? But it's just the
Yeah, you
the,
gotta.
the story's garbage, like, and that's a
Oh
huge.
yeah.
I mean, besides the whole Blizzard fiasco from last year that came out, I mean that was a huge decision and just completely quitting it. But it's all, but the story and lore of WoW, it's just been so mangled in the past like 6 to 7 years that
Yeah, yeah,
it's
because
so
you're
bad.
you're kind of faced with this escalating threat problem.
Not
I
just
remember when Cataclysm came out, and I was like, "Damn, what are they gonna do now?" You know what I mean? I was like, "There's not a lot of story," like, because I was a big fan of Warcraft. I was a big fan of Warcraft 3 and 2 and
oh yeah, two
and
and three. I
whatnot.
loved
And
those games. I never really played the first one, but I've
nah, nah, I haven't. I actually haven't either. But 2 and 3, man. Ooh, I love that 2 dungeon mode. It was so fun. But anyways, and yeah, like following along with WoW's story, I've just been like, wow, they're really just kind of really pulling things out of their ass, aren't they? Because it's
and
just
you can pull stuff out of
bad.
your ass if it's like written coherently. You know,
Yeah.
I mean,
I've seen some summaries, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense.
yeah,
You
it's
know.
no. I mean that
But
could be a whole freaking podcast in and of
yeah,
itself.
yeah,
But
yeah. I digress.
we're
um,
getting near 2 hours here, so
yeah.
we're gonna wrap stuff up here. You know what? I don't even care. The last 45 minutes was all 14 and MMOs. That's fine. We
Right.
talk plenty of Magic. It's good.
Stop playing, man.
But
I mean, I didn't know if you had any like more specific Magic questions. But
I do, but I do know that you have to get going, and
I got about an hour. Yeah.
and then I've got stuff I got to do.
I know.
No, it's just
But yeah,
3 hours is usually pushing. I try to end it around hour and a
No,
half to 2 hours.
hour and a half, 2 is usually pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, so give a shout out to all your socials and stuff and where people can find you.
Oh god, jeez. I wasn't prepared for that.
Oh no.
I mean, I have Real Baerthe at Real Baerthe on Twitter. Oh god, jeez. You know what? I just realized people can't spell my name.
Well, it'll be in the show notes too. So
Oh, you think people look at the show notes?
I mean,
But yeah,
what
no,
you would
there's
hope.
Real Baerthe. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I don't use Meta's services. So the best place to get me is on Twitter, or my Patreon, which is just Baerthe. You just look me up on Patreon. I have a website, Amaranth Alchemy. But that's more if you want to view my content. I have a whole gallery of like my tokens and proxies and whatnot. But yeah, interestingly enough, I don't actually do a lot of social media anymore. It's believe it or not super actually helpful to my business. But yeah.
I mean, whatever helps your business, right?
Well, I mean, I've been trying to use. I'm in the process of moving to use more Tumblr and TikTok and Pinterest. But it's just making content for those markets is a little bit different. So yeah.
All right, man. All right, well, thank you for coming on. It was great chatting.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
No, thank you again for coming on, taking time out of your day.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a
no
great
problem.
chat, and I hope people learn something about the more complicated state of proxies.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was interesting. Yeah. It's like I said, the state of proxy is changing. It's becoming more acceptable, and it's great. That's what
I'm curious to see where it goes.
Yeah, especially with Secret Layer now, and
But there's hope, as long as Wizards doesn't kill the game randomly. But even then, I've always said, if Wizards kills the game, you best believe the proxy community will keep it alive for
like
a real long time.
I mean,
would probably take it over.
Yeah, you all would take it over. God, even if Wizards killed the game tomorrow, dude, that game's not going anywhere.
Oh yeah, you have people right now that make fan sets. So just imagine
and
if the
good
game died,
fan sets too.
Oh I just splashed myself in my face with my water. Oh geez. But yeah, there's even some really good ones. But anyways.
All right, man.
It's good talking to you.
You too.
I'll see you later.
All right, well, thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
Hey everybody, thank you all for listening and watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope you did enjoy it. And like I said, we went a little bit long on the Final Fantasy XIV talk, but you know what? It's my new obsession. Or not my new, but my current obsession for about a year now. And yeah. So I hope you all enjoyed Baerthe. Make sure to check out his links in the show notes below and give them a follow. Check out their store. Check out their proxies. Check out, their altar sleeves and stuff. It's gonna be some awesome stuff that they have going on. I should do like take some pictures of some of the proxies they've sent me. I got a bunch couple years ago, and they're great. So thank you again for listening, watching. I do appreciate each and every one of you, and have a good night. All right.